Craig, I appreciate you coming on.
My pleasure.
I owe a lot of credit to you. I'm in this building and I'm working for Parisi because of you. You brought me in as an intern and then thankfully hired me after my internship. I guess I must have did something right for you to keep me on.
A couple of things. There was a couple of things. How many years ago was that?
2011.
That's 10 years ago?
So yeah, it's crazy. So August 2011, I started the internship, and then December 7th, 2011 was my first paid day, if you will. So
goes by fast. It goes by
does.
fast. Those were the time when, I first took over as a program director. I was trying to grow the business and grow Fairlawn again. And it takes good people to do that. And, your passion for just being an internship. Danny here, let me tell you something. When you do an internship with me here, you spend a lot of time with me. And Danny, still to this day, and we've had a lot of interns here, would do the evaluation verbatim the way I did it. Like, no straying at all. He would say the same exact things I said, and it used to crack me up. I'm like, well, all right, that's one way to do it.
But hey, speaking of that, you've had an incredible journey in this industry altogether. So just talk a little bit about where you kind of started from and all the steps or the stops you kind of made along the way.
So, I don't know, I guess I was probably 10 years old at the time, and I believe it was like 1982, and Herschel Walker was like becoming a power down there at the University of Georgia as a running back. And I believe after his Heisman Trophy winning season, Sports Illustrated did an article on him, and it talked about the infamous, he did thousands of push-ups a day, thousands of sit-ups a day, never lifted a weight, and I started to really I actually started to do that. Sitting in front of TV, I'd see how many push-ups I could do inside a commercial break, see how many sit-ups I could do in a commercial break. And that sort of slowly lent my father, who was an athletic director, would start bringing stuff home from their weight room at the school that they didn't use anymore. And it was like old school barbells and dumbbells, and some of it was in pieces. And I just used to start, playing around with it. When I got into high school, I would go down to, of all places, I would go to a football camp at Georgia Tech University. And there was a strength coach there. His name was David Pancella. He was a power lifter. And power lifters were the rudimentary, you're a power lifter? Oh, you should be a strength coach. You're a weightlifter? You should be a strength coach.
Yep.
Back in those days. And during our downtimes, everybody used to go back to the dorms and sleep, and I would go and sneak into the weight room, and he would sit there and be like, hey, what's up, kid? And he was a massive man, and he would just let me kind of hang around, and I'm like, wow, this is an actual job. I could be in a weight room at a university or something. So anyway, that led into looking around, looking for, my dad went to UConn. He was a phys ed major. I didn't want to be a phys ed major. So all of a sudden, a buddy of mine's like, hey, you want this? And it was a brochure for Springfield College. So I started reading about it, and D2, football. I wanted to play football in college. Wasn't real tall enough. I was only 5'11". So I figured, D2 was probably a good spot for me. Sent in my application, and the next thing you know, I got a phone call from one of the football coaches, said he was going to come down and see me, asked me to send him tape, and that's where I ended up, Springfield College, home of the phys ed at the time, but it was health fitness when I was there, and it turned into exercise science. Now that you can get a master's in strength and conditioning there. At one point, I think there were 8 Springfield College graduates in the NFL as strength coaches. So at the last part of your exercise science, you had to go and do an internship somewhere, like we all do.
Yeah.
It's just part of the program.
Yep.
And my captain my freshman year of our football team, Dennis Green, his next door neighbor was the sister of the San Diego Chargers strength coach. So naturally, he went out there. So I couldn't find it. I didn't know what I was going to do. So they had this big file cabinet and it was full of all the reports and projects that everybody did. And I found Dennis's. And I went through it, and in there was a number to the weight room. There was a phone on the desk. So I called the number. I started talking to this guy. His name was John Dunn. And the next thing I know, he's telling me he's coming home in 2 weeks. If I really want the internship, if I really want it, meet him on the Mass Pike at one of the rest stops, because that's where he's meeting his family, because his family's from Massachusetts. So I was like, all right, I'll be there. I got there like 2 hours early. I sat in my car, and then a little bit before the time, I started wandering the parking lot. I told him I'd be wearing a maroon Springfield College football jacket, which I wore. Well, it turns out his sister and his father went to Springfield College. I ended up talking to his father in the parking lot for about 45 minutes. I barely spoke to the guy. So he said, hey, I'll be back in 2 weeks. Call me on such and such a date at such and such a time. I go, okay. He's like, my father likes you. He goes, that's a good sign. And he's like, I'll hear from you in 2 weeks. I didn't know if I had it, if I didn't have it. That was it, done. 2 weeks go by, I call him at the designated time. He says, all right, I need you here the day after Memorial Day. Can you get here? I'm like, yeah. He's like, you're gonna need a car. I'm like, no problem. Just said yes to everything. Didn't even know what I was saying yes to. All I knew was that I was gonna be an intern for the San Diego Chargers. And that's where it all started. I mean, everything from walking in the weight room the first day and being like, whoa.
And what year was this now?
This was 1994. 1994, yep. So that was the last part of me graduating from Springfield, was doing that. Then from there, I stayed till about the middle of September. I stayed a little bit past my internship time, and I went home. My father's best friend from college and roommate was the athletic director at New Canaan High School in New Canaan, Connecticut. They had just built a $300,000 or $250,000 weight room in their. They used an old wrestling room, but they didn't know what to do with it. They bought all this equipment, and they really didn't have anybody qualified to kind of teach. Now, I mean, I'm maybe 3 months out of school at this point, so he hired me. So I ran the Peter M. Dean Fitness Center for about, 5-6 months. And then sitting at my desk in the Peter M. Dean Fitness Center, I get a call from John Thomas, the head strength and conditioning coach at Penn State football. Says he needs a graduate assistant yesterday. Says he called 2 NFL strength coaches. So at the time, John Dunn was the head strength coach, and there was another guy named Chip Morton. He was the assistant. In this interim period, Chip became the head strength coach of the newly formed Carolina Panthers. So John had reached out to John Thomas from Penn State, and then to Chip Martin, and they both said, oh, you need a GA, call this guy, here's his number. He's like, that's good enough for me. He goes, when can you be out here? All right, guess I'm going to Penn State. So I walked up to Uncle Vinny's office, the athletic director who gave me the job, and I said, listen, I just got the, he goes, don't worry about it, I'll take care of it, just give me your key. He's like, good luck.
That's awesome.
And 2 days later, I drove out to State College, which I had never been to before. Walked into the weight room, again, like, whoa. And didn't necessarily have the graduate assistant position. So I walk in the door, John Thomas, the only one in the weight room, he's in his office, and I said, he's like, oh, it's good to meet you. He goes, okay, go in that back, go up to that back set of stairs up there, go find a guy named Spider. Spider. He's like, just when you walk into the locker room, just keep yelling Spider, he'll come out. All right, so I walk, I'm like, Spider, hey, how are you? He goes, here you go. I go, what's this? He goes, put it on and meet John back in the, so it was like shorts, spandex, t-shirt, sweatshirt.
Yep.
And I'm like, pair of sneakers, socks. I'm like, So I walk into the weight room. He goes, all right. He goes, here's your interview. You make it through this workout. He goes, you can have the position. I'm like, all right. And he beat the hell out of me for 55 minutes.
Wow.
Within the first 15 minutes, I think I threw up. And he started walking back into his office, and I go, where you going? He goes, you're done. I'm like, no, I'm not. Let's go. Let's keep going. And I just dragged that garbage can behind me the entire time. And then he looked at me at the end, and he goes, all right, I'll take you to your apartment. He already had an apartment for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah. After that, so I spent 2 years there. And again, you know, they had just come off the 94 Rose Bowl season. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we were helping guys like Kajana Carter and Kerry Collins and, you know, all those guys trained for the NFL, which was absolutely, you know, Kyle Brady, the tight end. They're all #1 draft picks. Andre Johnson. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of like I was trying to build off of my experience with the Chargers, because I tell you what, the first time an NFL football player walked in the weight room and I'm 21 years old, 22 years old, I nearly soiled myself. And back then, you can look him up too, because he's crazy. Junior Seau scared the heck out of me too. I mean, and he was an animal in the weight room. But the more you're around it, the more you kind of get used to it, and the more you just realize they're just people.
They're just people.
Just people.
That's it.
I mean, we see it a lot here too, so it's kind of like part and parcel. But yeah, I mean, spent 2 glorious years there. We went to the Fiesta Bowl and the Outback Bowl, both the 2 years that I were there. And then lo and behold, the guy did an internship at the San Diego Chargers, ends up moving across the country and becoming the head strength coach of the New York Giants. And calls me up and he goes, hey, you want to come back to the big time with me? And I was like, oh no, really? And he was like, yeah. I'm like, I'm in.
That's
I'm
awesome.
in. The only regret, didn't quite finish that master's degree.
Yeah.
But, you know, that NFL was calling my name, so I had to go. But
once you got your ticket, you got to take your ticket.
Yeah, it was, you know. And then, you know, getting into there, I mean, 7 years I'll never forget.
Yeah, and through that whole journey, obviously that's a lot of steps. At any point in that journey, did you try to be anybody other than yourself?
No, I mean, I think you gotta realize that who you are is gonna get to where you wanna be. You know, when you start trying to be somebody else, it just comes across so phony.
Yeah.
And I think people are smart enough. I just think everybody, because of the way the world works right now, there's so much information out there. I mean, listen, I don't listen to music in the car. I listen to Audible. Mm-hmm. I listen to books. Mm-hmm. You know, I try to educate myself all the time, and it could be on anything from, you know, business to finance to marketing, you know, or a boring book about strength training. Yeah. You know. But there's always something. So I think people see through that a lot now. So I think it's important to be yourself. You know, work hard at your craft. Learn from others. Yeah. I mean, that's what I did the whole time. It was the theory and method of keep your mouth shut and your ears open. That's what I did. I mean, heck, when my advisor came out to San Diego to check on me, he watched me vacuum the floor because we were going to training camp, which was at UCSD, which is in La Jolla, about 10 miles up the road, and we just shipped all the stuff to La Jolla, and I was vacuuming, and he sat on a Home Depot bucket and read the USA Today. That was his big experience. But you know, I mean, I couldn't. I mean, let's say, I mean, look at you. I mean, you train the way you train. I never try and change how somebody trains, and you do a great job of it. You know, Sully trains differently, and he does a great job. Yep. So I think it's important that you be yourself.
I think that's applicable to not only coaches in a professional setting, but athletes as well. Don't worry about who you see on TV. Keep your head down and work hard on your own game, right? Stop trying to mimic or emulate others' games. I think one of the biggest things I've seen in the last couple of years, after Odell Beckham blew up in the NFL with all these one-handed catches, now all of a sudden you see all these kids catching the ball in one hand.
Yeah.
Be yourself. Work on your own game before you get to that level.
Yeah, I mean, look, you always have people that you're going to look up to, but you know, you should probably try and practice catching a ball with two hands before you work to the one hands thing.
Yeah.
But again, it's about being yourself, finding your own niche in the world, and where you fit in best, and how you make that experience and that moment work for you.
Yeah.
And I think that's important.
Before we wrap this up, I know you made some good relationships at the Giants with some of the players that you coached when you were there. If you could share just one story that would be safe to share on camera, that I'm sure a lot of the kids would be kind of excited to hear. Any that comes to mind, that's safe for camera.
That's safe for camera. All right, I got one for you. So, Michael Strahan, by far one of my favorite players of all time. Nice enough when we were doing IG Live workouts back in quarantine,
yeah.
He jumped on our IG Live for like 20 minutes, and
Yep.
I mean, it was like I had seen him yesterday. But by far, love that man. And we spent a lot of time together in the 7 years I was a strength coach there. And he was one of the only guys that during the off season, so the off season is whenever your season ends, until back then the off season used to begin officially in March, third week of March. But there was we call it like a no season, and that was from February into March. And he was always around. Workouts, even if it was casual, hey, I'm gonna be in Monday and Wednesday this week and then I'm going away, whatever. So we were working out one time, we were on the other side of the weight room. And this massive guy walked in the weight room. And we both looked and we're like, what? And we're like, man, awful early for free agency to sort of bringing guys in. I don't even know if it was the time of year or whatever. It was February, I do know that. And I started looking and I'm like, wait a minute, that's not a football player. And Michael's like, who is that? I'm like, huge Yankee fan here. I'm like, I think that's Giambi.
Oh, Jason
Giambi. So we get up, we walk over, and sure enough, it was Jason Giambi. And we were both like, he's big. And he was there at the stadium. They would do photo shoots and stuff. They just need like a tunnel, and then they could make it look like whatever they wanted to in the post-wrap or whatever. So it was just cool. I mean, never really met any baseball players before. So also the time, I can tell you this one too. This was a funny one. Doesn't have much to do with a player, but the time I watched Dave Matthews Band walk around the locker room with their mouths open, because they were at the stadium playing for like a four-day set, and they were like, whoa.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was kind of cool.
Did you get to go to the show?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
We went every year.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Matthews show was the ticket, man. It was the ticket. Another funny one, I won't tell you the player though, because it's pretty safe. But the other players in his group, so O-line, D-line, we used to have these stools, these wooden stools that would go in front of their lockers. And there was one stool that was always loose. And they would make sure that they would put it in his locker every single time, the last person out. And every single time he would sit on it and he would get so mad. Why do I always get the shaky stool? And the last time he smashed it on the ground, and the equipment manager was like, what was going on with the shaky stool?
That's
I'm like,
funny.
I don't know.
That's funny.
But yeah, no, it was good stuff. And then, coming, like when you came out of Temple, man, I mean, you brought a lot of young energy. That was exciting for me because, we do a lot of interns here. Not all of them stay.
Yeah.
Not all of them are asked to stay either.
No, it's true. This is true. But I'll end this how I end them all. And I did not prep Coach Craig for this at all. So this is a true test. 2 people, all these episodes I haven't prepped and they got it. I think you'll get it. I'll give you a huge context clue. This is called the little things that I've been doing.
Okay.
So everybody does the big things. Everybody goes to practice, everybody goes to the game because those are easy things to do. But what separates the average from the great is always
doing stuff when no one's looking.
No, the show is called
The Little Things.
The Little Things. The Little Things. I'll take it. Coach Craig, thank you so much for coming on.
Coach Danny,
Really appreciate it.
anytime. Peace.